just watching us again. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, and then settled into a low hum that seemed louder than it should have been. The night shift dragged its usual sluggish way through the empty aisles of the 24-hour convenience store. Outside, the wind rattled the aluminum siding, but inside, only the faint hum of refrigeration units punctuated the silence. I adjusted the sleeve of my uniform and leaned on the counter, scanning the dim aisles through tired eyes. Nothing moved. Nothing ever moved. The bell above the door jangled, faint but sharp. My stomach sank with the usual mix of irritation and curiosity. Who comes in at this hour? I looked up. A small child, no more than 6, stepped inside, hand in hand with a parent whose face I couldn't make out. The parent muttered something to the child, but the words were swallowed by the air conditioning, too soft to reach me. Then the child stopped, right in the middle of the candy aisle, feet planted firmly. Their eyes, wide and too knowing for their age, lifted toward the ceiling. "It's watching us again," the child said, voice almost a whisper but clear enough to make my pulse skip. I froze. "Watching what?" I asked, forcing a smile I didn't feel. The parent tugged the child gently toward the shelves. "Just look at the candy," they said. "Nothing's watching, sweetie." But the child didn't turn their gaze. Their small finger jabbed at a ceiling tile near the center of the store. "It's right there," they murmured. "It's waiting." I laughed nervously, rubbing the back of my neck. Night shifts always played tricks on the mind. Fluorescent lights flickering, shadows pooling unnaturally in corners. The ceiling tiles above me creaked. I chalked it up to the building settling. Still, the words settled like ice in my chest. Just watching us again. The again implied history, familiarity, a recurring pattern. I went about my work, pretending nothing had happened, but something felt off. The candy aisle seemed narrower than it should, the rows of chips slightly skewed. I swore I saw reflections in the freezer glass that didn't match the angle I was standing at. Shapes pooling in corners, dissolving when I blinked. The child wandered between aisles alone now, the parent distracted at the magazine rack. And I noticed how precise the child's movements were, deliberate, almost ritualistic. Their eyes kept flicking upward, scanning the ceiling tiles as though they could read the pattern hidden there. The first subtle sign came as a flicker in the security cameras. One monitor glitched, lines statusing across the feed, showing the ceiling from a strange, warped angle. I squinted, leaning closer. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw a shadow shift along the tiles, a form elongated and impossible, curling along the grid. But when I blinked, the camera feed corrected itself. Nothing. I tried to shake it off. Just the cameras acting up, I told myself. But the child was insistent. They tugged at the parent again, voice a trembling whisper now. "It's moving closer. Don't look. Just stay under it." "Under what?" the parent said, a hint of irritation in their tone. I watched the child's finger point again, right at the ceiling. My pulse was loud in my ears, the hum of the lights seeming to pulse with it. There was something there, something in the tiles, and I didn't know if it could see me or if I was about to see it. The overhead lights flickered violently, casting the aisles into strobing shadows. I caught a glimpse. A tile above the frozen foods bent slightly, like it had weight pressing from above. And then it straightened, settling back into place as though nothing had happened. I wanted to convince myself it was a warp tile, a trick of perspective. But the child's words rang in my ears. Just watching us again. Minutes crawled by. The parent had abandoned the child briefly to check the register, leaving them standing alone in the center of the store. The child tilted their head, whispering to themselves, hands clutching a small stuffed rabbit. "Don't move. It hates moving things." I stepped closer, drawn by a mix of fear and morbid curiosity. "Hey, what's up there?" I asked softly, keeping my voice low. The child turned toward me, eyes wide and glossy in the dim light. "It waits in the cracks. It listens. And it likes when people watch other things instead of it." A shiver ran down my spine. The ceiling tiles above creaked again. A slow, deliberate groan, like breathing. I leaned back, uneasy, as a faint thump echoed through the vents. Not loud, just enough for me to feel the vibration in my chest. I tried to focus on the aisles, but I couldn't ignore the way shadows pooled unnaturally in corners, curling inward. The candy wrappers rustled despite no breeze. The fluorescent lights buzzed in sync, as if the store itself were inhaling and exhaling. The child's voice cut through the air, soft and urgent. It likes the quiet. It likes watching when you think nothing is moving. Do you see it? I followed the finger once more. Above me, a ceiling tile shifted imperceptibly, and a thin, dark stain stretched along the corner. I felt my stomach tighten. The shadows under the lights seemed to thicken, not just on the floor, but on the walls, reaching upward. And the hum of the refrigeration units took on a low, whispering tone, like breath. Do you mean there's something on the ceiling? I asked, voice cracking. The child nodded solemnly. It waits, only up there. It watches us. It knows where the cracks are. Don't move. Movement caught my eye. The security monitor flared again, this time showing the ceiling tiles bending slightly in the center, a ripple passing across them as though something beneath the surface were slithering. I blinked. The monitor corrected itself. Tiles were straight, nothing there, but the sound lingered. A soft, wet sigh, almost human, almost not. I backed toward the counter. My fingers trembled. Every instinct screamed to leave, but curiosity, dread curiosity, kept me rooted. Then the child's voice dropped to a whisper, so soft I barely heard it over the hum. It likes the fluorescent lights. It hates when they're off. It can't stand shadows that move. A tile above the dairy section shivered, the stain along its corner darkening. The air grew cold, sharper, carrying a metallic tang. I thought I could hear breathing, slow, deliberate, coming from above, as though the ceiling itself had lungs. I looked down at the child. They smiled faintly, sad, knowing. It watches me too, they said. But I can see it. I can see what it likes. The parent returned, pulling the child gently toward the door. Time to go, sweetie. We'll get ice cream tomorrow. The child shook their head. No, not yet. Still watching. You can't leave. As they crossed the threshold, the lights flickered violently, and every security monitor in the store went white for a heartbeat. Then they came back on. Everything looked normal again. Aisles straight, tiles flat, shadows gone. But the chill lingered. The hum of the fluorescent lights no longer seemed mechanical. Pulsed, like a heartbeat from above. I couldn't shake the sense of being observed. I wiped sweat from my forehead and stared at the ceiling, finally understanding the child's warning. It's always watching, but only from above. It waits for the quiet, for the stillness, for the fear. And we don't notice it until it lets us. I left the register light on that night, the bells above the door silent. I didn't look up again, because if you see it, even for a second, it knows you've seen. And then it waits. The freezer hummed the way it always did, low, mechanical, a background noise I'd stopped noticing months ago. The night shift in the convenience store trained you to tune out sounds. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, occasionally flickering like tired eyes refusing to stay open. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and cold metal. Outside the glass doors, the parking lot sat empty, washed in sodium orange light. The world narrowed down to the single room and me inside it. I was leaning against the counter, half watching the security monitor, when I noticed the rhythm. The freezer's hum cut out for a fraction of a second, then resumed. Another pause, then a longer one. It wasn't the usual compressor cycle. This was deliberate, short, long. I frowned and turned toward the freezer aisle. Condensation fogged the glass doors, beads of water crawling downward like slow tears. Inside, frozen meals and ice cream sat perfectly still, their packaging reflecting the aisle lights in warped, glossy fragments. The hum stopped. Then it came back short, long, short. I felt a small, irrational chill run up my spine that had nothing to do with the cold air leaking from the unit. Get it together, I muttered to myself. Machines made patterns all the time. You only noticed when you were tired enough to look for meaning. Still, I found myself counting. Short, short, long. Pause. Short, long. The freezer door vibrated faintly under my fingertips when I rested my hand against the glass. The hum resonated through the metal frame, through my bones. Felt closer than sound should, like pressure, not noise. I stepped back. The hum changed immediately, stuttering once, as if recalibrating. That was when it clicked. I didn't know Morse code, not really. Just scraps picked up from movies, survival shows. But even scraps were enough to recognize the cadence. Dots and dashes, intentional spacing, language hiding in machinery. My throat went dry. The freezer hummed again, slower now, exaggerated, as if compensating for my hesitation. Short, long, long. A memory surfaced uninvited. An old chart from a book, dots and dashes translating into letters. I tried to match them in my head, clumsy and unsure. No, I whispered, shaking my head. The hum paused, then resumed with sharper precision. Short, short, short. Long, long, long. Short, short, short. My skin prickled. That one I recognized. Anyone would. SOS. The fluorescent lights flickered violently overhead, plunging the aisle into alternating bands of white and shadow. My reflection jumped in the freezer glass, stretching, warping, lagging half a second behind my movements before snapping back into place. Okay, I said out loud, my voice sounding too loud in the empty store. Okay, it's broken. I'll call maintenance. I turned toward the counter. The hum stopped. The silence was worse. It pressed in, thick and heavy, broken only by the distant ticking of the wall clock and my own breathing. I took another step. The freezer screamed back to life. The hum returned louder, faster. The dots and dashes tumbling over each other in frantic urgency. The glass doors rattled. Frost bloomed outward from the corners, crawling like veins. I spun back around. Don't, I said, unsure who or what I was talking to. The hum slowed, deliberate again. I realized, with a sick certainty, that it had reacted to my movement, to my intention to leave. The message resumed, cleaner now, easier to follow. My mind filled in the gaps, patterns snapping into place like a lock turning. Stay. Cold air spilled across the floor, curling around my ankles. My breath fogged in front of me. The buzzing lights dimmed slightly, as though the store itself were conserving power for something more important. I backed toward the counter anyway, eyes never leaving the freezer. The hum shifted. Listen. My heart hammered so hard it made my ears ring. This isn't funny, I said, my voice trembling despite my effort to steady it. You're a machine. The freezer responded instantly. Were. The word landed like a punch to the chest. The condensation on the glass thickened, swirling instead of dripping. Shapes moved beneath it, subtle distortions like something pressing from the inside. The frozen food boxes rattled, then stilled, their printed smiles frozen in grotesque cheer. I felt watched. Not from the ceiling this time, not from the dark corners, but from inside the freezer itself. From behind the glass. From within the cold. The hum continued, slower now, almost patient. They left US. Images flooded my mind without warning. Hands numb from cold, metal doors slamming shut, darkness broken only by flickering emergency lights. Screams swallowed by insulation. Air thinning. Time stretching. I staggered back, knocking into the candy rack. Chocolate bars clattered to the floor, the sound echoing unnaturally loud. The hum spiked. You hear US. I pressed my palms over my ears, but the vibration traveled through the floor, through the shelves, through me. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was thought, pressure, memory bleeding into the present. What do you want? I shouted. The freezer paused longer this time, as if choosing its words carefully. Open. The handle gleamed under the flickering lights, rimmed with frost. I could see my reflection in it, pale, eyes wide, breath shaking. I knew, with bone-deep certainty, That opening it was the worst possible thing I could do. The hum softened, almost pleading. We can't. The lights dimmed further. The security monitors behind the counter went black one by one. The store felt smaller, tighter, the aisles closing in. The freezer's glass bulged slightly, flexing outward with a soft, wet creak. Another message followed, fragmented, strained, stuck between. I thought of all the times I'd complained about the hum, about the noise, about the cold. All the times I'd stood inches away, never considering what it might mean to be trapped in perpetual preservation, neither alive nor allowed to decay. My hand trembled as it lifted. No, I whispered. I won't. The hum dropped to a near subsonic frequency, rattling my teeth. Then you will. The freezer doors flew open on their own. A blast of cold air tore through the aisle, carrying the smell of iron and old frost. The shelves inside were empty now, no food, no packaging. Just darkness, depthless and wrong. And within that darkness, something shifted. Not a body, not a face, a presence, diffuse, fragmented, like voices frozen mid-scream and stretched thin across time. The hum returned, no longer mechanical. It was a chorus. Thank you for listening. The lights went out. When they came back on, the freezer doors were closed. The hum was normal again. Steady, mindless, safe. I stood alone in the aisle, hands frozen at my sides, breath ragged. The store clock ticked forward. And beneath the ordinary hum, too faint for anyone who wasn't listening closely, the pattern continued, patient, waiting for the next person who might hear it.